Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Mondays at Noon. I'm Dr. Molly Pepper. I'm the Associate Dean for Undergraduate Programs here in the School of Business. And this is our weekly forum where we gather as a community to talk about topics that are important to us as a business school. And as a reminder, we're recording this session and it will be available on the School of Business YouTube channel. Our agenda for today includes a reflection, as it always does, and then a couple of breakout networking groups. After those groups, I'll hand things over to the Dean of the School of Business to introduce this week's speaker. So let's begin with the reflection. Since today's speaker is our first-year academic advisor, who sets the academic foundation for almost every undergraduate student in the School of Business, and then sees them through some of their most difficult struggles as students, I thought we could all reflect on the mentors in our lives. And as Oprah Winfrey said, a mentor is someone who allows you to see the hope inside yourself. So please take a moment and think of those who have given you that ability to see the hope within yourself, and think of those to whom you can pass that lesson to. Thank you. Next, we're going to engage in 2 brief networking exercises. We did this in our last session, so if you were here, you know how this works, but if you weren't, we call this a 3x3x3, 3 people for 3 minutes with 3 questions. Welcome back. I hope that you were able to meet a few new people. Thanks for participating. And I'm going to hand this Zoom over to our Dean, Dr. Ken Anderson, to introduce this week's speaker.
Well, thank you, Molly, and thank you for that wonderful reflection opportunity. I know mentoring is one of your special interests, and you've been such a great mentor over the years, and asking us to think about it, I think, was a very nice touch, given all the wonderful things Dennis said in my first breakout group about his lovely wife, Jane. And he wanted to make sure that Danielle and I mentioned that. I don't know what sort of pressure he put on people in his second breakout group, but he put a lot of pressure on Danielle and I to make sure that everybody knew Dennis thought the world of Jane. And I think that's something we all have in common. Jane might be the most beloved individual in the business school. She's been there quite a while. She can talk about that and phrase it however she would like in terms of her experiences. But I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to talk with her and to have her with us today. And I thought it would be a wonderful chance for us to learn a little bit about one of the hidden jobs, if you will, in the business school. Of course, if you're a freshman or a first-year student, she is not hidden to you, but a lot of work that her and her colleague Mary Beth do behind the scenes with our first and second year students. So welcome, Jane. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. And maybe you can talk a little bit about your background before you came to Gonzaga.
Well, let me thank you, Ken. I have to say, when you sent that invitation to me to be the Zoom person or the Monday of the week person, it was the biggest surprise in my entire life, I think. I swear. I was stunned, absolutely shocked. So I'm going to see what I can say today that makes people feel like I've provided a little information for them. I grew up in Pullman, Washington, not far away from Gonzaga, a college town where everyone just about goes to college. Going to college was what I knew was in my future. I did not choose to stay there in Pullman, where a lot of my high school and grade school classmates went. I wanted to go someplace that wasn't necessarily far away, but someplace that was really different. There were two things really that drew me to Gonzaga. One, the reason that I knew about it in the first place is because that's where my dad went to school, and he had the most admiration of, in terms of institutional fondness and allegiance. Gonzaga meant the world to him, and it made such a difference in his life. Because of that, I really was attracted to Gonzaga, but also because of what I got to know about the school in the research that I did. Its mission was really attractive to me. It said a lot to what I was looking for in college. My father was a college basketball player. He played basketball at Gonzaga. That was a big deal for me too. So for those reasons, here I came. I worked for a while after college in social services. I wanted to go back and enhance my education, advance it. I wanted to do something that had to do with higher education. And so I got a master's degree in guidance and counseling, with my focus being higher education. That's what got me in the door to the work that I'm doing now.
Cool, cool. And so this was a bigger surprise than Dennis asking you to marry him?
Well, if we really want to go into that story.
Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Okay.
Yeah, there's a story there.
I'm sure there is. So I think everybody has maybe a very general or superficial notion of what an advisor does, especially those of us at Gonzaga. But can you talk a little bit about what you do?
Sure. First, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Barnes, the dean who preceded you, Ken, in the role of Dean of the Business School. He and I designed this job because of the recognition that we had and have for how important college education is in the first place, but also how important academic advising is as a component of the college experience. And we wanted to create a position that would put academic advising out in front, or at least on a parallel level with the coursework that students are engaged in. The centrality that advising has in the purpose of what higher education is all about, the personal development of the student, how it sets the stage for academic success, how it fosters that whole questioning that students are engaged in throughout the time that they are in college. And he wanted someone to be able to deliver that to the students that would be consistent, that would be go into depth and really kick that whole process off in a way that would be of central importance to the freshman experience. We designed this as a first year kind of thing. So thanks to Dr. Barnes and his asking me if I would do that for him, this is the work that I do, I guess, essentially the fundamentals of what it is that I do.
And how did that change the last 3 months of the spring semester when students were no longer on campus?
Well, there were, of course, the obvious changes that everyone suddenly was someplace else. We were not gathered together doing the work that we do as a community side by side. So the obvious working from home or studying from home, being in isolation, that was the immediate and obvious sort of adjustment that all of us were forced to make on the fly. Consequently, all of a sudden, the necessity of and the importance of technology became central to whether or not this mission of ours was going to be accomplished at all. There was communication that needed to be ramped up. The faculty the staff, the administration certainly engaged in those communications with students, with each other, hoping that we were informing those people that we most needed to be engaged with what was going on with us, with them, how to keep all of the processes and the progresses that we were making moving along. Speaking of processes, excuse me, what advisors do, what the registrar's office does, in part, has a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of forms that you fill out, a lot of signatures you have to acquire, those sorts of running around kinds of little tasks. All of a sudden, that was not possible. So we had to convert all of those things where records need to be noted, taken, documentation needing to be substantiated. All of that became digital. Technology, again, jumped in as a major player in all of those sorts of interactions between students and faculty and administrative offices. Then there was a concern that our students were sort of getting it, that they knew that these were the sorts of adjustments that were happening for all of us, but that they knew that this was how things needed to happen. And communication then was central to us keeping the ball rolling. I was concerned about my students for the obvious sorts of reasons that I've just identified. Their academic well-being was concerning to me, and the success that we wanted them to continue to experience as the semester was moving to its conclusion. I wanted to know how they were managing in the virtual world, how they were doing without their teachers, without their friends, without the college atmosphere, without me to sort of guide them along, available at a moment's notice as I can be in my office. There were so many new challenges, and negotiating those things without warning or preparation really was, I think, the biggest adjustment that had to be made. Again, in a moment's notice. It was just remarkable how quickly we had to turn all of this around.
Right. And for those of you not as familiar with what Jane and Mary Beth do with respect to advising, one of the main things that they do is help students set their schedule for the next semester. And with the way spring played out, we were on spring break, then we took the extra week off. We came back to school online, virtually, whatever term you want to use. And then what, maybe 2 weeks for Mary Beth, 3 weeks for you, before you were both into advising students what courses to take this coming fall 2020. Is that correct?
Yes. I had been having those conversations with my students prior to spring vacation and their leaving campus physically. I was continuing that work, or was going to continue that face-to-face work with their return to campus, and very much upon their return to campus was then the process of the registration effort itself. So my work all of a sudden became one where no longer was I seeing my students in my office and giving them things to look at, having an interaction where getting my hands on documentation, on guide sheets, on all the sorts of paper stuff that I have as informational pieces, all of that had to suddenly become an electronic issue or way of communicating. So setting up the appointments that I had with my students in the first place online, using Zoom as the vehicle for communicating, how to get everything set up, convenient for me, convenient for students, in their place of where they were residing. I have students that live on the East Coast, students that live in Hawaii. I had a student in Sweden. So getting those time, even the time changes, figured out to know when we could, interact with each other and be successful with it. It was interesting. And then technology itself became not only a vehicle for accomplishing this work, but there were challenges in it too. My own Zoom sessions sometimes just did not continue. I had some unstable Zoom connections from time to time. So those were challenges that we had to figure out how to surmount and get beyond, work with
Right.
from plan A to plan B in a second.
Right.
Yes.
So setting the pandemic aside and the impact on what you do, can you talk a little bit about the changes you've seen over your career at Gonzaga? You know, maybe in the students, maybe in the university, maybe in the way, although you've already touched on a couple of those, maybe in the way you do your job.
Well, there have been some very obvious, observable changes. The campus itself is remarkably different from what it was when I came, not only as a student, but when I returned to GU as an employee here. So the landscape, the physical plant that we have, the shoreline, I guess I'll call that, the south border of campus along the river, used to be horrible and scary and a place where students were not supposed to go. And now it's one of the most beautiful features of campus. So there are some very different aspects of campus as you walk around. The buildings, of course, speak for themselves. Having Jepson to work in for the business school as opposed to the basement of the ad building, as we used to call it, College Hall that we entitle it now. Those sorts of things very definitely are different and make a difference. The size of the student body has changed incredibly. We are more than double the size of the institution as it was when I first came to work here. Maybe, I would have to go back to what a freshman class looked like when I was a freshman, but those changes are quite different. And the academic qualifications of our student body are enormously different, better, higher than they were. So there's been transformation in the plant, in the students, in the faculty. The faculty could, almost all of us, hang out in College Hall or the ad building. Now we occupy buildings all over campus. There are so many more people who are engaged in the work of delivering education to our students. And I think all of those things are for the better. It was a great place when I came here at the outset. It's so much more wonderful now than it was then. Our image and reputation has gone off the charts. It was a small regional school that you had to make sure you could explain and identify to people back in the day. It's now internationally known and respected. Students seek us out because of the quality of our programs. It's something that you can say you are a part of and know that the person you're talking to will at least have heard of it on all kinds of different levels, but will respect it because of the kinds of accomplishments that our university is now known for. And I think what has become much more pronounced in the way we do our work is the commitment that we have as an institution to our mission and our values. That is front and center of what we do. And students who walk on campus or who now visit us virtually know that that is what we are all about. And everyone here can tell you what it is that we are all about. That is, I think, a wonderful, wonderful enhancement and improvement with the people that are a part of the institution as employees, faculty, and staff.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, it would be hard to believe for some of the people on the call, not everybody, and I'm looking at Mike and Nancy in particular, but yeah, back in the day, all the faculty on campus were in the ad building, with the exception of the hard science people in Hughes Hall,
right,
and the engineers in the engineering building. But the School of Education, the School of Business, the School of Nursing, all those buildings that are now separate, those faculty were in the administration building back in the day. So just as Jane aptly points out, just the growth in the buildings has been remarkable and is obviously a great correlate for the growth overall in the university. So differentiating, Jane, between your first year students, maybe as you're saying goodbye to them as they walk out your door, and students that would be coming in right now to this coming fall. So talking about those first year students that you're working with, what advice, what guidance, what are the big things you try to get across to those students that you are currently working with?
Well, I tell them repeatedly that they need to work hard, that college is hard, and it should be hard. And no one is going to apologize if they have to really stretch themselves. They should expect that that's going to be part of the work, part of the job of being a college student. You're going to be put to the test. So just be ready for that. I tell my students to ask questions about everything, that nothing for which they don't have an answer should be left just hanging. To ask, just ask me, ask your roommate, ask your RA, ask the dean, ask your teachers, whatever it is you don't have an answer to, ask the question. I tell my students, and this is one of the fun conversations I have with them, is that they get to be, with permission, self-indulgent in a very positive sort of way. That college is a very special, unique chapter in their lives when they get to and should be engaged in the process of self-discovery. That college is a time when they need to figure out who they are and where they're going. That they should follow their interests, but more than that, find out what really makes them happy and then to go after that. It's all about, or it all comes as a part of being in the classroom and learning, taking subjects that they've never taken before, or harder versions of things that they've been introduced to before. But in that process, in that learning process, pay attention to what triggers, even if it's an emotional response, something that you want more of, like something you want to dig into deeper. That's how you find out who you are and what you're meant to do. I tell them to get involved with things beyond the classroom, because college is much more than the academic part of what their life will engage them with. There are many more hours of the day that they're living than when they're sitting in the classroom. In fact, that's a small part of their week. To explore what's out there, to do something that they've never done before, to be engaged in what this life has for them, to start this whole process of self-discovery, to get to know that the people here, all of the people around them, those are the things I tell them. Of course, there's the academic stuff. We do what you're going to take next semester, and if a class is closed, how you get into one, or put that off until next fall. Those sorts of nuts and boltsy kinds of things I talk about all day, every day. But there's so much to college that is why it happens in the first place that they need to really dig into.
And to put those conversations in a little bit different context, you're having those types of conversations with a couple hundred kids a year, right? Your advising load is
close to 400.
Somewhere in that range, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if you could be in a webinar right now with the couple of hundred 17 and 18-year-olds that will be joining us here in a month and a half, who have already indicated they're going to come to Gonzaga and are very interested in the business school. Your tremendous experience, your superb knowledge, what would you tell that group of soon-to-be college freshmen here at the end of June?
Well, to start, I think what I've often said to them, I guess in my first conversations with them, or as I'm bidding a prospective student goodbye after a visit to my office and they're committing themselves to Gonzaga, know that college is very, very different from high school. Different from community college if they've done some dabbling in Running Start or college in the high school or have acquired college credits in some fashion. And it probably isn't going to be immediately evident. They will get here and they'll say to me, you know, it's not that hard or it's not that different. So I'll say, well, actually it is. Just give yourself a little bit of time. All of a sudden, you're going to come to realize that you're in a very different world from what you've been living before. So just let that surround you and become a part of the life that you are coming into. Don't expect it's going to happen all of a sudden or like gangbusters, but it will happen. And then absorb it and enjoy it and appreciate it. Don't go it alone. Students often feel that they've got to come up with the transitional kinds of adjustments all by themselves. Don't do that. We have incredible support for all of our students. Just ask whatever your question is. There is someone who's going to get an answer found for you. We expect you also, I'll tell my students this, to make some very big decisions. Listen to yourself as you're being challenged to make a decision, and then own it. If it's not the right thing to do, or if you decide that maybe that isn't, in fact, what I want to do or where I want to go, okay, change your mind. That's fine. We'll let you do that. You get to explore, you get to figure out what's going to work for you, and this is a really, really safe, wonderful place to do that. Work hard. You're responsible now. You've got to kind of figure out how to do that on your own. We expect you to figure things out. Those decisions and that process of figuring things out is all a part of the growing up now that will take place here in college. And I will say, I hope you worked as hard as you could your senior year in high school. You can't go back and redo that year, but take the hardest things you can as a senior. I'll tell my visiting students that, and my first year students when they're just walking in the door, we'll talk about what they did and how that has prepared them, or what they should expect now to sort of gear up for if they did take a little bit of a vacation as a senior in high school.
So one area that comes up a lot, particularly with the business school, we have quite a few students, as many of you know, who pursue study abroad options.
Right.
And I know that when I talk to students or prospective students, you know, I say, hey, our curriculum is set up that most of you can do that without spending 5 years at Gonzaga as an undergraduate, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But you need to be organized and proactive and think ahead.
Mm-hmm.
What type of conversations or questions do you usually get? Maybe even in the first semester, you know, the first couple of weeks you have these students about study abroad.
Gonzaga really supports the study abroad experience and the importance that it can have in not only in forming what a college experience can be, but also lifelong impact that it will have. It is such a wonderful thing to be able to experience life with people outside of the definition of life as you've known it. But like you just said, being organized is going to make it happen in a way that will be successful not only for your own academic designs, but the timeline that you've established for yourself for completing college. So let's start talking about those things, those practical issues. Where would you like to go? That's a question that students often don't yet have an answer to. They think study abroad sounds fabulous and maybe glamorous and really fun and really exciting. So then I'll say, let's break it down. There are some questions now that we need to answer. Where do you want to go? How long do you want to be abroad? When do you want to be there? What academic program do you see yourself pursuing? We've got to make all of those things work together, match up with each other, figure out the curriculum, where you're going to be. How does that match with what you need? Let's just get into the weeds and figure out how we can make this come together. We will if we know those things, those details, those little tiny details make the biggest of differences. So when studying abroad is part of what students see their larger landscape incorporating, then I say, okay, now we've got to get to work and get really, you know, small details, small pieces. We've got to figure out those kinds of things. So then that leads them to, you know, those explorations, those self-discovery kinds of questions that I was mentioning a few minutes ago. It all falls into that same big ball of, you know, discovery and investigation that maybe they didn't think was a part of that interest in going abroad in the first place.
Right. It sounded like a great idea until they got into the details.
Then they have to go to work to figure out how it's gonna, yeah, exactly.
Well, and I know, and again, for those of you not intimate with this level of detail, the job that Jane and Mary Beth both do at preparing our students for study abroad, because I think it's fair to say most of our students do study abroad somewhere around the junior year.
Right.
Might be right before, might be right after or during, but we have quite a few students that avail themselves of study abroad options, and I think we are consistently the biggest contributor, if you will, to say the Florence program.
Mm-hmm.
That more of our students go to Florence than any other academic area on campus. And I think that's, again, a tribute to the work the two of you do, talking students through it, helping them organize, prepare, so that they can come back and graduate within a reasonable amount of time. So,
Right.
Tatao had a question about student expectations.
Okay.
Have you seen student expectations about faculty or curriculum or programming or extra credit or extracurricular activities? Have you seen those expectations change over time? You know, say from 10 or 15 years ago to today?
Well, in a very gradual sort of way, students are serious. Maybe to a degree that wasn't immediately evident a generation ago or 15 years ago. There is a lot of expectation on the part of students and their what background they are coming from, their parents or their siblings or their aunts and uncles or their grandparents. Many of these surrounding communities that students are leaving to arrive at college have either very overtly or subtly saddled them with some expectations that they need to get here and immediately get on board and be successful with what they're accomplishing or where they're headed. So getting an answer to the question about what they're going to major in is something that they start asking right off the bat, even though here in the business school, we've got opportunities for them academically that they've really probably never heard much about in the first place. So to know how to get themselves aligned with a program, an academic pursuit that's going to be meaningful and valuable and about which they're passionate when they haven't heard about it yet, how to unfold those things, how to get those questions, how to prompt those questions and get them to take the steps to investigate that work quickly. they're eager to do that. Those, knowing the answer to what their future holds for them, they seem to just really want to grab their hands around that and be able to hang on to it and know that that's exactly what's going to be waiting for them when they get out the door.
Cool. How about this one? One bit of advice you would give, well, two-part question. One bit of advice you would give faculty about advising our students. Again, for those of you not familiar with how we do advising in the business school, first-year students are with Jane, second-year students are with Mary Beth, and then they are transferred out to faculty within the building. So faculty do have a role in advising at the undergraduate level. A bit of advice you would give to faculty.
Well, I will pick up on one of the things that Molly values, that for which she was prompting us to answer questions about mentoring. Faculty advisors, because students are assigned to an advisor after they have worked with Mary Beth and me, that teaches in the discipline they are at that point pursuing. We are hopeful, made some decisions about what it is that their areas of expertise are going to be in, whether it's accounting or finance or human resource management or operations or management information systems. Wherever they're headed in the business world, they will be working with an advisor who teaches in that discipline. So the role modeling and the mentoring that expertise that the faculty member can bring to that relationship is what the students are really excited about when they learn, oh, I get to work with someone who teaches in what I'm going to study. That's hugely exciting for them. Consequently, the relationship then, whether or not the faculty advisor knows what section of what class is being taught in the spring semester or where classes are closed or those sorts of little logistical details we can get answers to very quickly. But the relationship that faculty member can have with the student is really going to have a long-term impact on the student. So just be willing to let the student know that matters to them, to the faculty, that I be an advisor to you, that I want you to be successful, I'll help you get there. If the faculty can impart that to the student, that makes the student feel valued, that their college education is meaningful and important to keep pursuing and doing well with. That's the great value and what an advisor, particularly in a discipline that the student is studying, can provide that student.
What an awesome answer. Thank you.
Welcome.
So I'll follow it up with an even tougher question.
Oh, thanks.
What bit of advice would you give parents?
Well, I would tell parents to take a step back. When a student arrives on campus, that student is viewed by us here as, I was going to say an adult, but that's not true, as getting close to being an adult. We know they're young. They are just leaving a world where most everything that they needed came out of the household that they lived in. They had parents and siblings and neighbors and friends, all of whom contributed to what their day-to-day routine was all about. Now, they're figuring out how to do that for themselves. And it's a process of discovery and making mistakes and getting back up on your feet and continuing to go after it. The student needs to be able to think about things, to make decisions, to explore, to make choices about where they're headed, what they're going to major in on their own. For the parent to support them, to say, yes, I'm behind you and I believe in you and I want you to be the happiest, most successful person you can be, and leave it at that. Students will always, let me change that word, very often say, when they engage in a discussion with me about some big stuff like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. If it's, not to throw darts at anybody, let's just say accounting. just because it's at the beginning of the alphabet.
Uh-huh,
Sorry,
sure,
Mike Fox.
sure.
Sorry, Mike. They don't want to do accounting as a major. And they're afraid that they're going to get in trouble when they go home and tell their mom and dad. And so I'll say, listen, you have to do what's best for what's going to make you happy. And I want the parents to say, you don't want to major in accounting? Cool. Figure it, whatever. Just be who you are. So
You
let
know,
the student make those decisions.
you know, Jane, one of the reasons we love you is you know, you're so good at what you do, and your knowledge and your experience and your intelligence, and you are so damn quick on your feet figuring out, how do I get out of the bind on accounting that I just brought up? It's the first thing in the alphabet. Mike, yeah,
I
number
gotta
one
jump
there,
in.
right?
I wasn't going to jump in, but now I have to. First of all, thank you all for doing this. This is very interesting. Jane, you've got 400 kids you got to deal with?
Yeah.
I just did a little math. And if you work in 50 hours a week and just do half of, do 24 hours a week with an hour a week with each kid, you can only get through 16 a week, which means it's going to take you 3 months to get through the whole class. It would take you the first semester even to just begin to get to know these kids.
Right.
This seems monumental to me. How does, I understand you spend a little time with them talking about their classes and stuff, but how can the kids access you when there's only 24 hours in a day?
Well, I'll speak in the way campus life used to be lived.
Yeah.
I'll set the current set of circumstances aside. It's my full-time job. I'm here 40 hours a week plus. And there are ways of being conversational with me that may or may not involve face-to-face conversations, but I kick things off and start my conversations with students the first week of school. I don't wait until we get close to registration. I get that process up and off the ground immediately. I'm available with email. I'm available over the phone. I'm available with kids dropping by and sticking their head in my office for 30 seconds and then running off to the class that's across the hall. The face-to-face are certainly the most substantial ways of conversation, but we incorporate all kinds of methods of communicating and build that into the work week, the work day. Every way of accessing me is acceptable.
That's fabulous. Because I am an absolute proponent of mentoring for all kinds of reasons, both from a professional and personal point of view, and that kind of service for these kids is just invaluable. So, well done.
Well, thanks. And I know students who have worked with you and have talked about the value that you've brought to what they understand the world to be. So thank you for volunteering.
That's been
this
nice.
time.
That's been nice. Thank you.
Molly, I think we've reached the end of our noon hour. You're unmuted.
You're absolutely right. It is almost 1 o'clock. So thank you everyone for joining us. Jane, thank you for all your insights and all the ways that you mentor our students and all of us. Appreciate you so much.
It was just the nicest compliment to be asked to do this, although as I said, I was shocked that you would come my direction. I just wanted to make one final statement concluding this all. Gonzaga, and I want students to know this, is going to make all the difference in who you're going to be. And if I had a message I could give to incoming students, that would be what I do say this, but prospective students too, it's going to make all the difference in who that student is going to be. There is no better place, in my opinion, to be a student, no better place to go to school. It just has completely transformed my life when I walked on campus as a first semester freshman. And I'm so grateful that this is a part of my life, that this is where I went to school and where I work.
Excellent. Couldn't agree with you more. Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. Mondays at noon is our chance to join together as a community. As I said, we'll post this to YouTube so other people can watch it as well. And we'll see you next week.